Hello, and again, welcome to Bit Depth. I'm Santiago Ramones. Across from me is...
Hello, this is Michael Wander.
It's been great meeting with you and sort of seeing... I don't know. I feel like I always get like different types of jobs or professions or types of people, but whenever I use sort of examples of like, oh, why didn't you do like a normal job or something, for whatever reason, whenever people say like a normal job, the automatic thing that comes to mind is like an accountant. But it's like accountants also have like, I don't know, is it a weird job to you? So I guess, who are you? What do you do? And then you can.
Sure. So I appreciate Santiago, you having me here today. So accounting hasn't been my career for my entire career. Hasn't been my job for my entire career. I started off, and maybe go into this a little bit later, but started off as studying Near Eastern languages and civilizations and Judaic studies, and then was kind of working in different jobs here and there, and eventually I went back to school. So, to answer your question, yes, one of the reasons why I went into accounting is that it sort of has this reputation as being a solid career, right? As being a normal job or whatever. And that was kind of what I was looking for, is something that I could somewhat depend on, right? Growing up, sometimes we didn't always have an abundance of things. So sort of for me, having that solid career choice was an important aspect of my choosing this career. But again, sometimes, as I'm going along right now in this career, I'm realizing, and I'm also dealing with people have this stereotype, this idea of what a CPA should be like, how they're supposed to be. I've had people tell me, don't wear a backwards hat when you're on video. Like, don't make a video with your hat on. I understand where they're coming from, right? I mean, if they're looking to hire me, they want, they might come from a specific area, a specific, business or specific environment, and they want, they expect, I mean, they're doing it out of trying to help, right? So, but that's something that I'm dealing with, like you're saying. I mean, accountants are people too, right? I mean, so we have we have a whole bunch of different aspects of us besides just being an accountant. So that's sort of the long answer to your question.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess, is it as like boring as people assume it is, or is it actually like kind of like, ooh, this is neat? Because I feel like whenever I like have my own budget spreadsheets and stuff like that, and I kind of get excited whenever I'm like, ooh, I did like well this month, or like this makes sense. Like, do you get excited running through the numbers and stuff like that?
So yeah, I mean, there's definitely that aspect for sure. I mean, there's going to be those times, and I think with anything that we do to some degree, whenever we're putting our energy to it, we're going to appreciate and we're going to grow to love it. And maybe some things are going to be easier to love than other things. When I was working for another company, it was a lot harder to find the excitement in what I was doing. Now that I'm working for myself, it's a lot easier because I see the direct result, the direct impact of what I have on my clients, on the people I work with. Excuse me. But yeah, definitely, but then there's also those times where I'm like, this has to be done. Something has to be done. And I'd much rather be doing something else right now. But you just kind of have to, it's kind of mentally have to, because I have a large responsibility as an accountant. When people rely on me, when people and their companies rely on me for filing their taxes, for putting out reports, there's a pretty tight deadline and timeline that that has some significant impact on them. That has it can have positive or negative repercussions. So once I commit to doing something, I have to really take it seriously and realize, that's not just going to affect me; it's going to be affecting them. And you can't really drop the ball. I mean, you drop the ball, and you just completely eliminated anybody's trust in you. And so you just have to really, for somebody to be in this industry, and I'm sure a lot of industries too, really trust is a major thing. So you really just have to take responsibility and own up to whatever it is that you are responsible for.
Yeah. I think that you had mentioned you had been working for a company first, and then now you're working for yourself. So like, I guess how liberating, but also how difficult is it, going from you work for a company and you just like clock in, you do all your stuff versus you set your own hours, you work for yourself, you find your own clients, and sort of what are the pros and cons of working for yourself versus working for a company?
I mean, so it's a great question, and I've had this conversation with my wife as well, right? So when I after my undergraduate degree, I went out to Israel where I lived for about 5 years, and that was sort of where I decided that I wanted to go into accounting. And I'd never taken an accounting course before, but previously I had liked numbers and I had liked business and different things. So I thought, okay, accounting is a solid career. You get a certain certificate that says you can do something, right? Mm-hmm. You can do something that the market will needs. And then, so I was probably, so I came back to do my MBA, came back to the United States, did my MBA in accounting, met the girl who became my wife. So your question is how the process, and so then right after I graduated, I was in New York. We were living in New York at the time, and now we're in LA. But right after I graduated, we moved out to LA, and I started working for a large firm, PwC, and they are all large firms. Public accounting in general is known for its long hours. The large firms are known even more so for the less flexibility, at least at the beginning stages when you first join. It's supposed to get a little easier. You set your own hours as you move up the chain. But so I was working with, so the hours were crazy, right? I mean, we just had a little boy. So I was, I wasn't seeing him at all. I was leaving before he was awake in the morning, and I was coming back way after he was asleep at night. We also had a daughter too, so I wasn't seeing my kids during that time period. And I think definitely affected my relationship with them during that time period, and probably even to some degree right now. For his first year or two growing up when he was young, I wasn't able to be there for him as much as I could have been or should have been, let's say. But then moving from there, then I went to work at a bank for a little bit, which the hours were a lot more flexible, not flexible, but they were a lot better. I was working from 9 to 5, right? 9 to 6. And so I was seeing my kids. It was predictable. The hours were predictable. So going from there, right now I'm working out of my home office. For a while, I was working in an external location. But I find that the motivation, right? The motivation that I have to work is so much greater now than it was previously. And so that almost ends up into sort of like a double edge, right? It's got pros and cons. On the one hand, I get to determine, if my wife needs me, right? I get to help her out in the middle of the day. If my kids need me, I get to, take a break. On the other hand, I'm working, 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. If I wake up 4 or 5 in the morning, I go to work. I start working right away. So the number of hours that I'm putting into work, and work can be considered, a lot of things that we're doing can also have work. Can be considered work. Marketing. If I'm posting videos online, if I'm trying to educate the the public of certain accounting things, right? So I feel like the number of hours I'm putting in are a lot more than I was doing probably even when I was at PwC. However, the flexibility that it allows me and the excitement and motivation about what I'm doing is so much greater. So I definitely, and one more thing about that, I think, and I've heard this from different leaders or thought leaders that I listen to, working for somebody else and getting a steady paycheck. Some people think, oh, that's such a steady career, so steady, you're so brave to stop receiving a steady paycheck and going off to work on your own. But really, it's really an illusion, right? If I'm not creating value for my employer, if I'm not adding something to his bottom line, somehow adding some sort of value, my paycheck being steady is just an illusion. There's nothing steady about it. They could fire me at any time. Right now, I feel like it's even more steady because I feel more in control of the energy and the effort that I put into it. At the same time, having sort of being diversified, if you'd call it that, having multiple clients also is a bit more steady, not steady, but a bit more secure even than having just one source of income.
Yeah, definitely. I do have more thoughts on that front, but you've said other interesting things that I can't not go into. So, uh, you you obviously didn't start in accounting, and so like, why did you go? Uh, I forget what it was, like foreign language, but like what brought you there, and I guess how did you end up going in a different direction?
So um, initially, right? So I was in high school, and without going too far back, right, just sort of
Mm-hmm.
jumping into a point where I can answer the question. But when I was in high school, I was I was in a high school that was on a college campus, sort of like they called it middle college, and I wanted to go into. I was thinking about engineering at first, right? Because I knew math. I was good. I was good at math, and I wanted to go into engineering. But at a certain point, I was spending 10 hours a day when I was, I don't know, high school, taking a college class or something. I was spending 10 hours a day inside of the math lab, right, or the tutoring lab, and I was sitting there. I was like, I'm going to be an engineer. That's what I'm going to be. And I thought I knew what I wanted to do. And so I was sitting there, okay, this is what I want to do. This is a good career, right? I'm going to be an engineer. I can do math. So what am I going to do? I'm going to do engineering. So then I was completely ignoring these other aspects of my life that were slowly building up and coming to this point where it was like, okay, I'm either going to be a robot, right? I'm either going to be a robot and just do engineering and be completely emotionless, right? Not saying engineers are emotionless. I'm just saying for me, I needed to focus on some other aspect of my being, of who I was, and go for and so then I said, okay, you know what? I got to a point where, and I guess, I was brought up, I was raised as a Christian missionary, and found out a little bit later, sort of heard these things and throughout, but I was found out later that I was Jewish, and so it wasn't just it wasn't just in a regular missionary group. I mean, there was a lot of, what I experienced were anti-Jewish sentiments in that group that I was with. So for me, finding out that I was Jewish was a bit of a shock and a bit of a, went to this period of self-denial where I was like, I'm not Jewish, I'm everything else but Jewish. So and it happened, I think it happened, it was at such a young age where it was so, critical and important in my life, where it's leaving such an impression, that it took me a while, through high school, to finally say, you know what, I don't care what anybody thinks about me, where I need to go pursue and find out who I am at my core. So then I basically, so that was kind of around the same time that I was sitting in the math lab for 10 hours. At that point, I just said, you know what, I took a short trip to Israel and I just fell in love, and I was just like, oh, this is awesome. Like, I want to explore, my identity further. And so I sort of made a deal with myself, said, you know what, you're supposed to go to college, right? Everybody goes to college. Everybody, it was sort of like a thing that I wanted to do, that I knew I was going to do, and that I wanted to do. So you know what, you got to get a degree. So get a degree in something where you can sort of study something about your own history. So I basically did that undergraduate degree in Near Eastern languages and civilizations, which I studied Hebrew, Arabic, history, politics, economy, things like that of that region of the Middle East. And then I also double majored in Judaic studies, which there was some overlap in some of the classes. So I double majored in that. And then from there, I went, then I was okay, got my degree. I wanted to minor in math, but again, I was just like, no, I'm not going to sit in another math class. I'm not going to just try to get all these different degrees and degrees upon degrees. And, what am I going to do with that? I don't have no clue. So I went out to Israel right after graduation pretty much, and lived out there for about 5 years. And, I studied, initially I thought, okay, the logical thing was to go to university out there and to go do my master's degree. Again, it's something economics or something like that. So I think I lasted one semester. I was like, no, trying to do it in Hebrew was not my, it was difficult to do, and trying to, and just also just like, I don't want to be in school anymore. I did enough. I'm done. So did a few other things out there. I went to yeshiva, which is like a religious study place. And for me, it was, there's a lot of different things. It's like learning about the Torah and learning about history and learning about this and that. For me, it was really a way to connect with my identity, where my ancestors came from. And, there was definitely a lot of positives, a lot of pros over there. Got to a certain point where, my family wasn't out there. My immediate family was not out there. I do have some distant cousins out there, but, I was looking, I guess, at a certain point, I started feeling a little bit closed in. It's like, okay, this is, it stopped becoming a way to explore and be a positive, I guess, right? But it started becoming, this is what we do. This is, if you're going to be a religious Jew, this is how you need to, this is what's expected of you. So stop becoming more from internally and more external. So, so it was, so I started, sort of slowly, sort of mentally, okay, this is good, but let me start thinking about the next steps. And so, basically it all sort of came to a head a little bit, not in a negative way, but just sort of like, okay, now is the time to move on, and came back to the United States, started working, and, started thinking about what I wanted to do. Accounting came to mind as a good option. Not for any other reason, just besides, liking math, wanting a good career, liking business, and, feeling like you have some sort of advantage in it. Like I can do it, and it would be interesting also. So that's kind of the, the background of it.
It's interesting how you kind of went full circle back to the math, but kind of in a way that you wanted rather than the way that you were kind of told that engineering is a thing because I like math. But instead you kind of found your way back around after exploring. And I think that's really interesting. So I guess what's something about being a CPA that no one really knows about, that it's like, oh, they take care of that too? Or like, oh, I can't believe that you would have to deal with these things all the time.
Well, honestly, most people think a CPA is tax. They do tax. And my initial background, when you're going to school and you're looking at public accounting, is either one of two tracks that everybody wants to go into when they're going into public accounting. Is you're either going to go in tax or you're going to go into audit. So those are the two meat and potatoes of the firms, and the public firms that hire, especially the large firms that hire. You're either going to go in one of those two tracks. That's where they get, sort of like it's a mill, right? It's a factory. They pull people in and they let people go. Pull people in, let people go. Either audit or tax. Yes, they're going to have a few other different areas or services. So I wasn't, tax seemed to me like a bit more of a niche area, whereas audit to me seemed like it was a lot more all-encompassing, all-inclusive, and frankly, just a little more interesting to me. So now what I'm dealing with is basically defining or redefining and trying to explain and educate the public or my friends, the people that I know, my Facebook community, social media, is on what exactly accountants do. And part of it is educating them. Part of it is educating myself, because there's so many different things that an accountant can do, or somebody even within an accountant's mind can do, right? That doesn't necessarily need an accountant or somebody with a CPA to do certain things. So really just trying to, educate myself. I know, based on my experiences and my experience, certain things that I can define, that I can describe, that I'm confident in doing. There are certain things that maybe I have more limited experience with, but I could still do. And then that's basically, the tax is what everybody thinks that CPAs do almost exclusively, but everything else, the bookkeeping, bookkeeping don't need necessarily an accountant, but bookkeeping is one aspect. Financial reporting, audit and review, and all related under the attestation umbrella. There's the audit, there's the review, there's the compilation, and then there's the financial reporting. That's an area that I think on a small business level, which a lot of the people that I deal with and I work with are on that small business level, they don't necessarily need those services just yet, because it's more when they're trying to raise capital, when they are, so when they want to get a loan from the bank might say, hey, I need to have your financial statements reviewed, or you need to even have financial statements. A lot of them don't even have financial statements because they don't need it just yet, right? They're using an Excel and they're keeping track of their revenue and their expenses right there, which is working perfectly for them wherever they're at. So that's kind of the, defining myself or figuring out those services and my market on what services, how can I provide the best value to other people. Obviously, there's going to be the tax side, but then just the other side as well.
Yeah. What's kind of been the biggest struggle after kind of starting your own business and doing it yourself? What's been the struggle getting it built up and getting your first clients and sort of finding your foundation?
It's a good question. I mean, so I remember when I was back in college, or back in doing my MBA, there were a few people who were also working on clients, and I just didn't have the time. I was like, let me just get my degree done, and they had tax clients, and so I was focusing almost exclusively. Then at a certain point, closer to the end, I got a job as an accountant, not in public, but in like a software company, and then. So from that point on, so then I was working at PwC, and again, no time at all to really have any other clients. I had a few friends that were saying, hey, you're a CPA, maybe you can do this for me. And, maybe I was doing a tiny bit here or there, but really there was not much time to do anything. Once I started working for the bank, where my hours were a lot more steady, I actually brought somebody else who was working on their accounting degree. And she had more time. So she was actually doing a lot of the work for me. And I was on the weekends and evenings, I was reviewing the work and I was doing different things. I was interacting with the clients. So that was sort of the beginning. Then I did that for a couple of years. And I started slowly having, 2, 3, 4 clients that I was doing some work for. And that sort of gave me the courage, the confidence. I said, you know what? At the point where I was at the bank, where I was sitting there and I did not want to be doing that work right there. I would much rather, I felt like I was making much more, I could have had a much stronger impact on my clients. I said, what am I doing here? Why am I sitting here spending my time, my life doing work that's less impactful than doing work that is more impactful for people? So I said, okay, I'm going to jump off. I'm going to sort of cut this cord. I'm going to go off on my own. But I had sort of that lifeline a little bit where I already had a few clients that I was doing some work for. But that was sort of the beginning over there. And, right now I'm, still at the stage where I'm like, okay, you know what, I'm still sort of a solopreneur, right? And I've got one person who does the same girl who's been doing some work for me. I had, for a few months, I had a couple of other people who were doing some work for me. But sort of finding the right people to do the work, right? That you can really rely upon is not so easy. So having, I don't want to have to micromanage, right? If I'm micromanaging, then I don't have the right people who are with me. So I need to be able to, I want to be able to find the right people who I can sort of delegate, or not delegate, but that they're going to just take the reins in some way, so to speak. And they're confident and trustworthy to do the work, and mentally able to, right, having the skill to be able to do the work in to some large degree, so I can free up my time to do other things such as growing the firm, bringing in more clients and things like that. So that's probably the biggest hurdle that I'm facing right now at this time, is just being able. Yeah, because right now I'm behind. You go through these stages. Right now I'm behind in the work. Like, when if I'm not able to provide to do the work in very quickly because I have too much going on, that's when I need to try to bring more people in. And that's kind of what. But then having that consistency, right? Because it's a little bit scary to take the responsibility of somebody else's income, right? I mean, if they are going to quit another job and going to come work for you, I have the responsibility to make sure that I can pay them, and I'm not just going. It's not just going to be a short-term thing. So that responsibility, that sort of hesitation right there, that fear a little bit to grow is kind of holding me and hindering me a little bit. But trying to be cautious, but at the same time, that cautiousness is also keeping me at the level that I'm at, keeping me from going to the next level.
Yeah. How do you think social media has affected the way that you operate? Because I mean, not everyone has to use social media to be a CPA, for example, but it sounds interesting the way that you're doing it, and you're using social media to educate people. And so I guess how does that change the normal way of operating versus using social media?
So I was introduced to this person named Grant Cardone a few years back, and I was actually introduced to him through somebody who was basically saying on their video, not everybody's Grant Cardone. So sort of talking about Grant Cardone in a, not in a negative way, but just saying that, his way isn't necessarily right for everybody. And so I thought, what, if the person I'm following has a slight little bit of, is talking about Grant Cardone, then I want to find out who he is. Now, Grant Cardone, he came from not very much, right? Modest means. He's built up a pretty sizable empire. You can call it an empire, I guess. But there's a few things about him that I really like. Some things, some people really don't like him. Like I can't stand him. And he's a salesman, right? And he has perfected that art of sales. So he knows how to push. He really knows how to push, and he does it in a way where it's like, I don't know. We'll leave that conversation about his sales. But one thing that I really like about him is his, he uses social media in a tremendous way, where he oftentimes makes himself vulnerable. So he does two things, right? He'll educate people. He's done this a lot. He educates people, or three things, I should say. Educates people, provides emotional content about it, makes himself vulnerable to people, and he pushes the sales. He pushes things for you to buy from him. So I think that, so he has this 10x concept, or this, and I don't think it was his particularly individually. So his 10x concept is basically where you make goals. We should all make goals in every area of our life, personal or financial, that are 10 times the size of the goals that we would really normally think about making. So these 10, and he's, so like I said, so he's huge on social media. He just did this 10x challenge Facebook group where and one thing I love about him is he'll bring in speakers that are almost that he wants to learn from, right? So he's bringing in speakers and he's sharing his connections with everyday average person that's on Facebook, anybody who wants to, basically, right? So he'll bring in these amazing speakers. Like he had, Evan Carmichael is one that comes to mind right now that has some cool stuff that I'm working on right now with the social media. But so that 10x, that was like at the end of September is when he had that 10x challenge community on Facebook, and they had very specific days. Every day for about an hour or two, they would teach you something very intentional and very specific, and they would give you some homework to do. And so that was just been a couple of months. That was a big jumping off point for me with pushing some of this, with setting some specific goals, and these with regards to social media as well, in a large part in social media. And one thing that Evan Carmichael said, which I just mentioned his name, is that the way he views social media, the way he uses social media, and the way he thinks that it should be used in a great way, in an ideal way, is, create whatever your schedule is. Let's say once a week, right? Create some video on YouTube, right? He's a big YouTuber guy, but to create a video on YouTube and use that video to sourcing that video for other social media channels, for Facebook, for this. So you sort of use YouTube as a way to track your, like, let's say if I'm educating the public on accounting, for instance, I can have different either different channels or different playlists or whatever it is on YouTube, and use that to educate people. And use that to, let's say, take a screenshot from it for Instagram, or a short video clip for Instagram, or for Facebook, or for LinkedIn, or for TikTok even. So sort of, because it can get overwhelming trying to hit all these different unique content for each of these different channels. So he was able to tie it in together to say it's doable, and this is the way to do it. And I think also Gary Vee talks about something similar, but his is a lot more elaborate, and I didn't go through his thing in enough detail. It was a lot more palpable when Evan Carmichael said it in like his 15-minute little spiel. But for me, one thing that I really found once that 10X community Facebook group started was that I felt comfortable. And I felt really sort of like I was in an environment, right, in that group, in that Facebook group. I was in an environment of people that I wanted to connect to, that we had something in common. So, I just started, I was just like putting myself out there. And I just said, I just was like, hey, I know there's a lot of people in this group right here, and we all have something in common. We're all trying to 10X our lives. We're all trying to grow. We all know of or have some sort of familiarity with Grant Cardone. So I know we have something in common, and I know that I want to grow and I want to push my business. So I just want to meet you. Who are you? Let's just meet each other. Let's just introduce each other. So I would put out these like random posts, that were just geared to connect with people. Like one of my posts that was just like, hey, where were you born and where in the world do you live now? Right. And so that post has probably had it has probably had about 700 to 800 comments on it right now, which for me, that's a large number of comments, for a post. And it was interesting, just on a sort of an aside, something interesting about it was that there was about a 3-week period where there were no comments on it. And I realized that I had stopped responding to the people that were commenting on it, right? So the algorithm, just as an interesting aside, the algorithm works in a way that as long as the author is commenting and responding on it, it's going to remain active in people's feeds somehow, maybe because they're your friends or however it worked. There's a 3-week period where there was absolutely no responses on it, and then all of a sudden just picked up again as soon as I started responding again. So it's kind of interesting. But really, that's, to the long answer to your question is just how am I using social media? Really, it's just to connect. But now how it relates to accounting, cut me off if I'm blabbing too much. But how it relates to accounting is just, I think how it would relate to any industry is just by connecting with people, right? When you connect with people and you are really sincere and you are just talking about, a couple of things, trying to educate people about something that I might have some knowledge about that might be able to help other people, right? So trying to educate them and just connecting with them, they get to know you as a person. Video is a great way to do it because they can, photography, pictures or sound. Like pictures can be, it's like a little snippet. It's a lot less. They learn less about you than they would with, let's say, a video where they can see you, where they can feel your emotions a little more. So that's something that in addition to the posts that are just have words in it, I'll put out a few videos here or there, and we've gotten some decent responses, but just really, I think the overall goal is just to connect with people. And that is something that some people have, I wouldn't say criticized me, but have questioned. Not the majority, very few people have questioned just like what's the bottom line? What's the ROI? What's the return on your investment? What is, why are you asking this? What do you care where people are born and where they live now? Like, how is that going to help you? Like, I'm just connecting with people. Like that's all I want to do right now at this point. And Grant Cardone talks about building out your base, right? So just building your base of people that He said something that was like, if somebody offered me $1 billion or to know 1 billion people, I would choose the latter. I want to know 1 billion people. And and I think there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, yes, obviously everybody needs to have some sort of income, and you have to consider that and think about that. But that's kind of my goal with social media is just to connect with people and use it as a way to grow. I'm growing as a person as I'm doing it.
Yeah, exactly. One last question on this front, and then we'll get to the really hard questions. What advice do you have for people, either, I guess, in your sphere, or really just people trying to start their own business? I actually just started an LLC for myself for doing audio production. So it's like, what advice do you have for people that are starting their own business and kind of trying to get off the ground?
I mean, I would say, for me, huge is a schedule. It's a schedule. It's it's having a schedule and sticking to it. Discipline. So I have my calendar, my schedule, and making sure that allotting blocks of time for very encompassing so many aspects of running a business, right? I mean, I have to have a block of time for doing actual client work, right? I need to do that. And then, but also equally important, maybe even more important, right, is having that block of time for connecting with people, for working on the marketing, for, let's say, sending out emails, or for exercising even, right? Because all of those are going to build the person who they are, right? It's going to make you and the business, you really are that business, right? You are the face of the business. You are so to whatever degree we feel as an individual, we feel like we are successful, we feel confident, we feel, that we're capable. That's the degree that the business is going to succeed. And so we have to, follow those mentors, right? Look at growth, look at, speak to people or follow people or teach ourselves about how to do certain things, whether it's reading books, whether it's looking online, whatever it is, watching videos about it. So we have to have that time also, but I can easily get caught up in doing one particular thing and then focusing all my energy on it and thinking, this is the answer, this is how it's going to work. And then completely ignoring all these other things that just yesterday or last week or last month, I thought, this is what I need to do. I need to spend all my time working on client work. So for me, it's important to create that schedule, and it can change and it's going to change. But to have those blocks of time and then filling in those blocks of time with details, with how I'm going to be doing it. I think that for me is sort of the way to encompass a lot of other aspects of growth.
Yeah, definitely. On to the hard questions. What is the role of spirituality or religion in your life?
Well, we touched briefly on it before about the sort of my background and my history with religion a little bit, organized religion. And so in terms of, I think that we all are, we're definitely more than just physical beings, right? So now, and I think that that's been, people have known that since the beginning of time. And I think that oftentimes organized religion can be more of a divider than a uniter. And so I think that's my biggest struggle right now, is just being part of a community, right? Because organized religion creates a community, right? It does. And it's nice to be part of a community. But at the same time, not having that herd think, right? So thinking like everybody else. So for me, sort of like creating your own religion in a way. It's like being confident enough to disagree with people and not and not feeling like you're, if people get defensive, then that's something that's lacking in the strength of their belief. So, so for me, being confident to express my beliefs, ask my questions, express my questions, because I'm around a lot of people, both religious and non-religious. So, and everybody can have their own stereotypes. Everybody can have their own, thoughts, and I don't have to agree with all of them, and I don't have to argue with them either. I'm not trying to change anybody's mind, but not to surround myself, not to let myself be completely, to give myself the time, the separate time, the space where I am able to think independently and choose what topics I discuss with what people, right? I might have a business relationship with one person. I might not have, a spiritual conversation with them because that's not the topic. That's not the person that I want to have that conversation with. It's not to say that I shouldn't express my thoughts on something if they were to ask it, but it's just sort of being very cognizant of who I put myself around, because our environment really does affect who we are. So I'm not sure if that really answers your question.
No, yeah. In your own way. So what is your definition of God?
God, I think honestly, God is just the unifying force in the world. If you think about it, there's so many religions, right? There's Jews, there's Christians, there's different sects within each of those. There's Muslim, there's Hindus, there's people, there's atheists, there's agnostics, there's people, and I think that if there is this God, this vision of God, this version of God, or whatever it is, I think people will really misunderstand and mistake what God is. And honestly, I don't know if I really know. I don't know if I really know. And I think in some ways I'm a bit disenfranchised or disconnected with that word almost, because it's like I've had so many different people. Usually when I hear it, when I've heard it, it's with a specific definition. It comes with a specific definition. And I don't want to rely on these external definitions. So it's like if anything, right? If anything, I just think it's a unifying force. That's all. And I think there is a unifying force in the world. So some people can call it God. Now the question comes in, does God have a conscience, right? Is there a conscience to God? And so, me with my rational brain, I want to say, well, if God, quote, created everybody, created everything, created everybody, then I have a conscience. So it's impossible for something without a conscience to create something with a conscience, right? So there must be a conscience to whatever being created everything. So it's okay. So there is some conscience now, but then that's a bit of a scary step to take, because then, okay, if there's a conscience, then is there something specific that God has in store for the world? Is there a specific purpose of the world? Are there specific tasks, right? Does God have a specific thing that he wants me to do, he or she wants me to do, right? And maybe yes, maybe no, but at that point, I don't know. And even if I say yes, right? Even if I say yes, that there is, I think that's very individual, because the risk over there is that if somebody gets you to say that there is a God with a conscience and a specific purpose of the world, then it's like defining that purpose can become Yeah, it's I think it's individual. Each individual has to think about it for themselves, and so that's something that I'm trying to work through. And I think it's connecting with people, right? If God created everything, then it would be connecting with people and setting a good example, right? Being, doing good, adding good to the world, just doing things that are good. And I don't always succeed at it, and sometimes I will, get upset, right? Get upset about something. Somebody's trying to sell me something, and I don't like the way they're trying to sell me something or whatever it is. And so I'll post our conversation online, and I'll sort of mock them and make fun of them or whatever, or just like say this is how you don't sell to somebody. And I won't call them out by name or whatever, but some people take offense to it. They're like, well, we're salespeople, and so you're saying salespeople are bad in some way. So, and whatever, that's just a small, silly example, I guess. But basically, if I did have a purpose in life, that would probably be my purpose. It's just to be the best person that I can be, add good to the world. And yeah, that's probably
it. How do we reduce the division?
Wow. How do we reduce the division? I mean, I don't know. I would say first and foremost is just to be 100% confident in my role as a uniter, right? Mm-hmm. Because I can't be a cup that's overflowing, right? If I'm half empty, right? So I need to be 100% confident, and surround myself by people who think and feel like me and see their same purpose as that. And then I think just as setting an example, maybe, but honestly, I don't know. I mean, there's so much history, with organized religion. This might be my own stereotypes, right? But I view in many ways religion, organized religion, and I'm saying I'm an Orthodox Jew, right? I'm saying this as an Orthodox Jew that there are many, I see a lot of organized religion as being a lot more divisive than uniting. Mm-hmm. Whether it's within Judaism or any other religion, right? And a lot of religions claim to unite. They claim to unite, but a lot of the adherents do what I see, do the opposite. And there's the old adage, don't judge Judaism by the Jews, or don't judge Christianity by the Christians, or don't judge this by the people who are following it. And so there's probably a lot of truth to that. So I think ultimately all religions probably have the same source. We come from the same place. But we as, fallible human beings distort it and don't know how to do it properly. And that's speaking for myself as well. So just the only way I think to decrease the amount of division in the world is probably just to be 100% on board with my goal, my vision, as uniting people. That's probably it.
Yeah. What do you think? Oh, actually, I'll skip that one because I like how this one is contained within it. But what are you optimistic about for our future?
Wow. Am I optimistic about the future? I better be. I should be. And we all have to be. We all try to be, right? That's the goal. Optimistic about for our future. I think questioning. I think, when I see my kids asking questions, even like I feel like that's even though we live in such a divisive world and society, right? In many ways, I think that our, God has given us a brain to think, and a brain that no matter what happens, no matter how, no matter where we live, no matter how even brainwashed a person could be, right? No matter that God gave us we have this internal compass of what is right and what is wrong. So, and just the ability to ask questions and to critically think, I think it bodes well for humanity, and that eventually, I'd like to think we'll gradually sort of baby steps get better and just get more inclusive of each other.
Yeah, definitely. What makes you content?
what makes me content? I think seeing my growth, right? Seeing the progression, going from one place to another. But you know what? It's a little bit thinking about my death in the long run, right? Thinking about when I'm on my deathbed, and thinking about the amount of time I have between now and then is really makes me want to speed things up. It's like, hey, growth is good, but what is the pace of that growth? Like, let's not be complacent with slow growth, because I don't have all the time in the world. None of us do. And so just sort of saying, hey, when I'm on my deathbed, what do I want to have accomplished in my life? And let's take maybe some bigger strides. So I think on the one hand, the growth it makes me happy. Also, just the ability, to think in terms of where I want to be, and that also makes me happy. But in the same note, what sort of I need to work more on is just sort of that creating those thresholds, those milestones of let's speed things up.
Yeah. By the way, I'm just going to mention, like, I'm not bothered by the kids in the background. I think it's nice to hear them. So it's fine. Okay. When will
my sister just got here, so
sorry, fine.
My sister just got here, so they're they're excited, they're ready to go to the park.
Yeah. So a few more questions, and then you can join your children in the fun. But when will you be satisfied?
Wow. I hope never, and all the time at the same time. Right? Like, I need to enjoy the process, and I need to be satisfied with every step of the way. And I think I am. But at the same time, I don't ever want to, like, we have to be happy with what we have. What's that phrase? Happy but hungry. I just made that up, I think. So, just be happy with what, I'm happy with, even for whatever I've gone through in the past, right? There's been a lot of different things. But to be able to use that, and I think that's probably when I just to answer your question, I would be happy, is when I'm able to fully and completely use all of those negative experiences in my past and use them as stepping stones, and not be embarrassed about them, not be ashamed about them, not be afraid to talk about them to anybody, but just to use them as really stepping stones and as ways to see them for what they really are, as experiences that made me who I am today, as experiences that made me stronger to be able to overcome certain things. So I think that is probably, that's going to be, it's going to be a huge milestone.
Yeah, definitely. What advice do you have for people in general, not regarding any sort of context, but just life in general?
Advice for people is, I feel like it's hard for me to give advice right now, because I'm still right in the middle of doing a lot of things, like taking my own advice, right? I want to take my own advice. I'll tell you what advice I give to myself, right? What advice am I giving to myself? Is, take risks. Take risks. You only live once, right? There's not, and risks with money specifically, right? Because I'm afraid to even invest money, because I'm afraid of losing that money, right? So, but that's such a small way of thinking. It's such a limited, that's thinking I'm going to live forever, right? I need to, if I want to get to where I want to be at the end of my days, I need to take these huge strides, which are only possible by taking risks. Nobody who made it from little got a lot. I'm not just talking about financially, I'm talking about in any way, but nobody ever really made it without taking risk. It doesn't mean being frivolous or stupid in what you're doing, but don't overthink things. Don't overthink things, right? set these goals and just say, you know what, I'm going to do it, whether or not I'm 100% ready in it to do it or not. Just jump in and just do it. And if you lose, you lose, but you learn and move on, get up quickly and move on to the next thing.
Yeah, definitely. Last one, and potentially most importantly, cake or pie?
Cake or pie. If it's ice cream cake, for sure we'll go with the cake. If it's cheesecake, I guess it's cake. I guess it's cheesecake and ice cream cake, so it's cake.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Michael, thank you so much for doing this with me. Where can we find you and all your things?
Santiago, thanks for for doing this podcast with me. I really appreciate you having me on again. So the best place right now, I'm most active on Facebook. Would love to connect if you want to connect on Facebook. Michael Wander CPA. I'm on Instagram also at michael.wander. You want to email me, happy to do it that way. I usually check the emails more. Sometimes there's a lot of things that come in on Facebook, so I might not necessarily get to everything over there, but email would be info at wandercpa.com.
Cool.
You can send it to me over there. And that's I'm all over social media. Not necessarily huge, but I'm all over there. So if you look up Michael Wander CPA, Los Angeles, California, I don't think there are any other that fit that specific description.
Yeah.
So happy to connect with anybody and everybody.
Awesome. You can find everything that I do on my website, santiagoramones.com. I make music. Bloom is available now, streaming everywhere. Put it on in the background or show it to your friends so you can all enjoy it together. You can also buy it on Bandcamp and get bonus content so you can sit alone in the dark with your headphones on and listen to the album in its entirety while reading and looking at the bonus content. I also make music with Power Cycle, an experimental electronic trio. Our first completely improvised album, Too Many Damn Cables, is streaming everywhere. To support this podcast, leave reviews, comments, tell your friends about it, and buy my music, because by supporting me, you're supporting the podcast. I always end the podcast with my 3 things. They shape my life philosophy. Those 3 things are: love never fails, it's going to be okay, I might be wrong,